how does it feel to have your guy cast as the big bad in Man of Tomorrow?
Yeah, no, it feels great, man. I just found out who he was 24 hours ago, and yes, it's never felt better. It's my guy. I've been saying it all along. Lars Eidinger should be Brainiac. I think that's what everyone's been saying. It's been the rumored fan cast for years.
This dude, I didn't realize was in Jay Kelly. He was the guy off his meds who stole the purse that George Clooney attacked off of the train. This guy is Brainiac, and that is such an out of left field casting that you can't say it's good or bad, honestly. And I think this casting, and we're going to take care of a couple housekeeping things before we get to Avatar Fire and Ash today. We have to talk about the casting of the villain for Man of Tomorrow. It's interesting how much emphasis James Gunn puts on an audition, for a role. It's not just what is the big name, who can sell the movie, who can make the best movie. So I think this casting, I found it surprising, but also it falls in line with what James Gunn has been talking about trying to make the best product for the big screen.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting where, again, you see Superman castings, and he picked Corn Sweat over a Nicholas Holt. Obviously, Corn Sweat, not as big of a name as a Nicholas Holt, not as an established actor as a Nicholas Holt. And he decided to go with the more unknown, right? And here we'll see other names that maybe were pitched for being Brainiac here. And if there was any like Nicholas Holt type names, but he definitely places a lot of emphasis on the actual audition, which you don't really get nowadays with big roles like this, because for big villains and hundreds of $1 million budget movies, usually you just can pick from a few of the biggest stars in Hollywood, right? Who are interested in the role and kind of pick who you'd want. Here, it's like, again, it's focused on the film, the actual like quality of the film and the character. And I like that from James Gunn. It's not just about getting the best name, it's about getting the right name, right? It's just inside baseball there,
We're
but
not
you know what
looking
I mean.
for the best guys. We're looking for the right guys. Rest in peace, Herb Brooks.
Yes, exactly.
And I was also thinking, like, we made the comparisons, like Corn Sweat being cast for Superman and Thomas Rhys Harris being cast as the lead in Clayface. It's like lesser known actors for big name heroes, or at least like leads in major superhero movies. And it reminded us a little bit of like Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1, where you had, Chris Hemsworth coming onto the scene as Thor. You have Chris Evans was a notable name, but he wasn't an A-lister cast as Captain America. RDJ kind of fallen off the wagon a bit, trying to hop back on, leading Iron Man. But then I'm also looking at those movies, at least you had some of these movies, you kind of need a big name villain because you have a relatively unknown actor. Like Iron Man 1, you have Jeff Bridges here. Captain America, you have Hugo Weaving, and then you have like Tommy Lee Jones in that movie. So maybe it's just interesting to me because usually a villain, they're more prone to be huge names because it's usually like a one-off performance. You don't have to commit long-term to a cinematic universe. I just find it interesting that Brainiac is such a big name, and then they went basically the same strategy they've been doing, not worry about the selling of the movie. Do you think it's because like this is a sequel? The first one was a financial success, despite what the Snyder cultists will say. Do you think that like played a part in it where it's like, hey, just trust the process?
I think they were thinking trust the process with the first one.
Yeah.
There was a lot more pressure on the first one for sure, but just by casting David Cornsweet and not like an Austin Butler, like that some people were trying to fan cast
I like
as.
how James Gunn does that, though. I do, because it goes against what Hollywood is kind of being criticized for, where it's like the same actors play the same roles. The fan cast can kind of predict who's playing what. James Gunn will be like, no, like I've seen this person screen test. I've seen this person actually embody the character I'm looking for, and he fits the script or she fits the script.
And this, I have a feeling for this guy, my boy Lars, this could be an audition tape that gets released to kind of prove to people like, hey, like you should probably like hold off on the who comments because this guy is him, maybe, as James Gunn would say.
Was that a shot at me for tweeting out from TDI parentheses like alert, alert, alert? I do like every time there's a big casting news or big news in movies, I quote tweet and I do alert like the sirens going off. I did that for the Brainiac casting, but I did in parentheses, who? because I've never heard of this guy, and I had to look up that he was actually the guy who got attacked in Jay Kelly. So it seemed like that was a personal attack, honestly, because I run pretty much to Twitter.
It was not a personal attack. It was not a personal attack. It was
That is exactly what I said, though. Who? With a question mark.
you are a part of the group I was attacking, but
Okay.
attacking it wasn't like I'm battling for Pandora. Like I'm the Navi against the corporate capitalists I don't know, colonizers. No, no, no. It's more just a general state of affairs.
Or maybe I was the Quaritch and like you were the, so Jake Sully. That's what it kind of felt like. Maybe I'm representing a group of people, no matter what, I'll stand by. Whatever. Lars Eidinger is your Brainiac. Who are the other guys that were rumored was like Matt Smith? It was Claes Bang. And people were saying like, oh, it's like it's going to be someone not a high profile in status because of the budget. I kind of think that's bullshit because it's a Superman movie, when I heard that. And Lars Eidinger is the guy who's part of like independent German. He came from like independent German cinema, I think.
Yes.
And he's kind of been making waves. Like Irma Vep is like a big show he was a part of. He's a guy that I agree with you when you said that I need to see that audition tape, but that's the type of thing you're not going to see until the movie's released, kind of how they did with David Cornsweet when people embraced David Cornsweet as Superman. And so a lot of people had question marks around it. And then James Gunn's like, this is the moment I knew he was Superman. And then I think you're going to have this movie come out. Most likely it's going to be successful and people are going to love Lars Eidinger after this movie. And James Gunn's going to tweet, here's the audition tape. And here's when we knew this guy is Brainiac.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be where we get the audition tape. Now, if like I would say this as to kind of wrap up my initial thoughts here or initial reactions on this casting would be it was more of a who and not of outcry of like no, because like for Superman there were people that were in that like no, like we could have had this person, you know. For Brainiac it was less of that. It was more just like kind of perplexed of like huh. And I think it was just because obviously casting Brainiac is not like casting Lex Luthor or casting Superman or whoever big A-list superhero or supervillain, right? Brainiac has been quiet recently. We've all known like he's going to be the villain in this movie, but again, you heard the Matt Smith rumors, but none of them were really concrete rumors. Like there were obviously concrete rumors of Nicholas Hoult being auditioned for Superman or all the people that were interviewing for what's her name? Rachel Brosnahan's role, Lois Lane. You know, it wasn't as concrete rumors. Like this just like happened, right? So I think it's just a little different, and the fandom isn't necessarily in an outcry, which means yeah, you don't have to release the audition tapes to kind of prove it right now. You can kind of like let things settle.
And I think there's proof of concept with what happened with Superman, David Cornsweet in the movie Superman. I think people actually have put their faith in James Gunn. Like, hey, James Gunn is the guy who cast this guy, right? And he's the guy who's going to make this work. He wrote the script for the goddamn movie. He knows what works. And I was looking up like some other stats on Lars Eidinger. 6'3". He's tall in stature. And then you have Cornsweet, 6'4". So you got like eye to eye. This guy, I'm looking for the cadence. I'm looking for the intimidation factor, but I'm also looking for a little bit of cockiness. I'm interested, and like you got to be super intelligent. This is a guy, Brainiac, a villain that's trying to collect all of the knowledge in the world, which also kind of makes sense why he's a Superman villain, but that's why you need Lex Luthor in this story, or the guy who considers himself maybe is the smartest being on Earth who's threatened by Superman. Maybe Brainiac is his next great threat. And he views him as a villain just in a different way than Superman does. So I think that's going to be interesting. People are forgetting, like Lex Luthor's fighting alongside Superman for a part of this, but probably going to cross him at some point. And we're also getting the iconic green suit, right? The war suit for Lex Luthor. So even if like you were unsure about Lars Eidinger as Brainiac, you have like Lex Luthor is a huge part of this. And you brought up one more great point. Sorry, I'll pass it on to you to like wrap things up, but I know you already said that, but like when Nicholas Holt's taking on Lex Luthor, you're looking at actors that have already played that part. Like you're looking at Gene Hackman, who's already played him, right? You have the big KS, who's played Lex Luthor. You have a beloved TV version with Michael Rosenbaum. So like there is like a predecessor, something to live up to. And with Lars Eidinger, it's an unknown that you don't have someone to really, follow up. You've had different iterations in shows like Supergirl and Krypton, but like who gives a shit? Like who knows who those actors were? Like this guy can completely make it his own and be like the first iteration. Exciting.
Yeah, that is a good point, and because he is a relatively unknown actor, right? This role could really elevate him because, like, yes, he was just in Jake Kelly in a very small role. He was in White Noise with Noah Baumbach, Adam Driver, movie back at Netflix movie back in 22.
Bombat guy.
So, yeah, clearly
That says
Baumbach likes
something.
this guy, right? 2 Baumbach movies. So, this will be like, all right, he's clearly a Baumbach guy with smaller movies, not box office, obviously, with 2 Netflix movies there. Even if they were box office, probably, sorry, released in theaters, probably wouldn't be big box office. This is big for him to kind of showcase his chops on the big screen in a big prominent role, English speaking, English speaking um, movie instead of German, right? And actually showcase his talents like you can as a villain in a lot of these roles in superhero movies that we always talk about. Always are juicier for people that actually like don't want to get attached to projects for years and years, and you kind of lose that luster. You kind of plateau. Versus a villain, you could be a spark and then catapult your career, and that's what we could be looking at here with Lars Eidinger.
Lars Eidinger. We had to look up the pronunciation before the podcast.
Trying here on TDI, we're trying.
I think 75% of the people who saw this, they literally did the, emoji of, the yellow face, the guy's like scratching his chin, the interesting emoji, like not like good or bad. It's more like, show it to me.